Welcome to UN Insider. I'm Elaine Reyes at the United Nations headquarters in New York. Join us as we delve into the world's most pressing issues and learn how the people inside work toward a better future for everyone around the world.
Coming up on UN Insider.
We have very real fears about what lies ahead. The current situation may pale in comparison with what is to come.
Pushing for a ceasefire in the Middle East. The UN makes urgent calls for a humanitarian pause to get more aid into Gaza and more civilians out of harm's way.
We do not want to see a spillover. We have to have the ceasefire on the ground first.
China steps into a key role on the UN Security Council. A look at the country's diplomatic priorities. Smarter and greener, transforming our urban centers with an eye toward a more sustainable future. Next.
The conflict raging in the Middle East remains a key concern for the United Nations. Israel has expanded its ground operations in Gaza, and in the Palestinian territory, conditions are bleak and humanitarian concerns are growing. There's no end in sight for the bloody conflict between Israel and Hamas. Israeli troops say they are advancing deeper into Gaza on the ground. And from above, airstrikes bombard the Palestinian territory, including multiple strikes on a refugee camp. But there are signs of more humanitarian assistance. Foreign nationals and patients in need of critical medical care streamed out of Gaza into Egypt as a Rafah crossing opened for the first time since the siege began. Aid is trickling in, but relief workers say it is nowhere near enough.
The WHO supplies that came into via Rafah have been immediately distributed to 7 hospitals all over Gaza. Unfortunately, these essentially needed supplies are merely a drop in the ocean of needs.
At UN headquarters, emergency sessions of the General Assembly and the Security Council as the international community looks for diplomatic solutions. And they warn the death toll of UN aid workers continues to rise.
I lost 64 colleagues in just over 3 weeks. This is the highest number of UN aid workers killed in a conflict in such a short time.
China will have an increased role at the UN Security Council this month. The country assumed the rotating presidency on November 1st. Jody Jacobs has a look at what we can expect from China's turn in the seat.
China taking over the rotating presidency of the United Nations Security Council comes at a time when the council is at an impasse. The world is watching closely, hoping for a resolution that will bring an end to the violence, provide relief to the suffering civilians, and pave the way for a sustainable peace in the region. And the United Nations, especially those agencies working on the ground in Gaza, say the clock is ticking and have pleaded with the Security Council to take action.
I implore the Security Council to immediately adopt a resolution that reminds parties of their obligations under international law.
I urge all member states to change the trajectory of this crisis and work towards a genuine political solution before it's too late.
The Security Council has repeatedly tried to address the Israel-Hamas conflict through resolutions and debate. However, it has found itself deadlocked in a complex web of international politics and differing perspectives.
I would be very surprised if there is a break in the impasse, primarily because we have seen this again in the past, and there has been a very clear pattern that permanent members tend to shield the actions of their allies through a veto. We saw this in the case of Syria, and now we're seeing it in the case of Israel. Unless there is a consensus on the prioritizing of humanitarian cooperation, freeing the hostages, and ceasefire, I'm afraid there is likely to be a continuation of this impasse for the foreseeable future.
As China assumes the rotating presidency of the UN Security Council in November, its permanent representative here in New York is very clear about his country's position a position that can hopefully break the impasse.
We believe that so long as we focus on the most pressing issues at hand, such as a ceasefire and an end to the fighting, the protection of civilians, and the prevention of a larger humanitarian disaster, it is not impossible for the members of this council to reach a consensus. Silence means acquiesce, and inaction is tantamount to a green light. The eyes of the world are upon us, and history will record our choice.
And while the Israel-Hamas conflict is not the only pressing issue around the horseshoe table in the Security Council chamber, it is most certainly one that will be all-consuming for the Council in the month of November. But we cannot forget there's still conflict in Ukraine, ongoing violence in Haiti, and several UN peace missions across Africa that still needs the Council's attention. China last held the 15-member rotating presidency in August 2022. At the time, China said that the United Nations Security Council should fulfill its due responsibilities. And now, as it takes over in the midst of the Gaza conflict, it hopes its calls for dialogue and cooperation will move things forward, especially on the issue of the Middle East. Jody Jacobs, CGTN, New York.
Xu Dejia is monitoring developments inside the halls of the United Nations. Dejia.
Elaine, just like you mentioned, China assumed Security Council presidency for this November. With Israeli-Hamas war waging on, with the Ukraine-Russia conflict continues, certainly it's a tough month and a busy one for the president of the Security Council. Now, Wednesday, the permanent representative of China to the United Nations, Ambassador Zhang Jun, actually met with the press and laid out some of the philosophies behind China's presidency. First, to push the Council fulfill its responsibility of the UN Charter and take action. Second, to address what he called the root cause of security issues. And third, to increase efficiency, improve working method of the Security Council. He was very frank that though it won't achieve all of the coming tasks, but China will try its best.
For China, definitely we will do whatever we can to promote the mutual trust of Council members, the solidarity, the cooperation of members. I fully understand it's not an easy job. I'm not in a position to tell you that I can get all the things done, but what I can tell is that we will spare no effort in facilitating the cooperation of Council members in fulfilling our tasks and our responsibilities.
And the ambassador also showed the gift Chinese mission gave to all the Council members. One of them is Lu Ban Lock, an ancient Chinese toy, and let's hear what he said about this toy.
What I was telling Council colleagues is that let's take this as peace and to cherish what we have before us. So once it's broken, you cannot fix peace together easily.
Well, I'm definitely not going to disassemble it. I tried 30 minutes, yet I still failed to restore it. Well, but before Chinese presidency, the biggest issue Brazilian presidency faced in October was, of course, also Israeli-Hamas war. After 4 draft resolutions failed to be adopted over the past weekend, an idea was floating that the E10 countries, the 10 non-permanent council members, was to submit yet the 5th draft resolution and try to pass this one in October. I talked to several missions. Everyone said they were still in negotiations about this wording. And it turned out that this so-called resolution has never been submitted. Well, we saw the great divide in Security Council, and to be exact, the US will ultimately ask for 2 things: condemnation of Hamas and Israel's right of self-defense, which I don't think many Council members would agree on. Well, which means it's actually somehow good to not yet come up with a 5th draft resolution, which was destined to be vetoed. We also saw the Israeli airstrikes on Jabalia refugee camp. The Secretary General gave, I think, the toughest statement yet on this attack.
The Secretary General reiterates that all parties must abide by international law, international humanitarian law, including the principles of distinction, proportionality, and precaution. He condemns in the strongest terms any killings of civilians. And of course, on a broader framework, the Secretary General continues to call on all parties to bring an end to this shocking violence, pain, and suffering. Also, he continues to call for the immediate and unconditional release of all the hostages currently being held in Gaza, and also for the entry of vital humanitarian assistance at a scale needed to meet the mounting needs of the Palestinian population.
Though there is no Gaza or Ukraine on this month's Security Council program of work, but it is anticipated that the Council will have at least one meeting on Gaza situation every single week, and at least 2 on Ukraine crisis for the whole month. Elaine.
Shudija, thanks.
Coming up.
What we want by 2030 is to achieve these goals, to see a world where there is no poverty, there isn't hunger, and where gender equality is being prioritized.
UN Insider.
We are CGTN, China Global Television Network.
A salute to women working for peace. The UN hosted an exhibit called Peace Begins With Her. It includes 50 portraits of women involved in peacekeeping and activism around the world.
Having more women in peacekeeping and having more empowerment of women in peacekeeping setting is critically important, because you cannot build sustainable peace without women. And peacekeeping operations need to be reflecting the reality of the communities in which we serve.
Peace Begins With Her marked the anniversary of a Security Council resolution on women, peace, and security. It highlights the important role of women in preventing and resolving conflicts and calls for protections from gender-based violence. Women and girls make up half the world's population, but they can face staggering inequalities. While progress has been made, the world is not on track to meet the UN gender equality goals by 2030. At the current rate, it would take an estimated 286 years to address gaps in legal protection and eliminate discriminatory laws. And it would take 140 years for women to be equally represented in leadership positions in the workplace. I sat down with Jeanette Ascona with UN Women. She is one of the authors of the UN's 2023 Gender Snapshot Report. Jeanette, your findings in the Gender Snapshot when it comes to women and girls in the Sustainable Development Goals are actually pretty dire. What would you say are the biggest takeaways?
The situation currently is really dire across all of the goals, and what the report does is really look at gender equality across 17 global goals. And across them, we're seeing that women and girls are disadvantaged, are facing many, many challenges, whether it be increases in poverty that we've seen recently, increases in hunger, not the kinds of advancements that we want to see in terms of education outcomes, in terms of economic opportunities. And so we're not where we need to be in terms of gender equality.
But when you look across the world, that's not quite the case. What would you say to those who might be a little surprised to hear the findings?
What I'll say is that, when you look across countries, you do see some progress. And so I don't want to sit here and say that there hasn't been any progress over the past 10, 20, 15 years. There has been progress. But what we say in the report is that progress has been too slow. It's been uneven. And what we want by 2030 is to achieve these goals, to see a world where there is no poverty, there isn't hunger, and where gender equality is being prioritized, where women and men are facing the same kind of opportunities and life chances that they deserve.
I want to quote something from the report. If current trends continue, over 340 million Women and girls will still live in extreme poverty by 2030. Progress will need to be 26 times faster to reach no poverty by 2030. So my question is that even possible? And how do you mobilize to even make progress going forward?
Yeah, I think it is possible. I think that we need to strive to reach these aspirational goals. I think that we can all agree that these are very aspirational, but this is what we all are trying to achieve collectively. And the way to do that is by addressing some of these challenges and making sure that we are implementing policies that make a difference. So let me give you an example. We know that social protection, investment in social services can make a difference. Invest in those. We know that making sure that women have the same kinds of economic opportunities as men can make a difference in their economic independence, in their economic autonomy. And so making sure that policies are directed in that way to ensure that women and girls are advancing, that their well-being is shifting for the better over time.
One part of the report that really struck me was the section about older women. Because when you hear about investment, you think of youth, you think of women in their prime, but we know that women generally live longer than men. So what more needs to happen to better support this population?
I think part of the problem is that they're not visible. We need to make sure that these issues are visible, that the challenges that older women face are visible and present in policy discourse. And so it was very intentional for us to have a in focus section of the report that focused on older women and the very particular challenges that they face, right? Over our life courses, we're all going to go through challenges and tribulations and things that we need help with. For older women, it has to do with their health, making sure that their health care is being prioritized, that things that affect older women are being prioritized in research as well.
How do we get more women into positions of power, leading boardrooms, leading companies, leading countries?
There are a number of ways. I think one key barrier is social norms that are still kind of gender biased and still see women as potentially not as great of a leader as a man. That is frankly not true. We have the evidence to back that up. And so part of what we need to be doing is changing some of those biased social norms that continue to impact the kind of progress that we're seeing on some of these issues. And then having really concrete policy interventions. We know that quotas, for example, can make a really big difference. Countries that have women leaders, heads of state, countries that, where we see that women are a greater share of parliamentarians, where they're a greater share of those making decisions at the local level, tend to have quotas and temporary special measures that are proactively ensuring that women are seated at those tables.
You sound very upbeat and optimistic. What message would you want to send to people?
I think the message is that we can't do this alone. We have to work together. We need businesses to be proactively supporting gender equality initiatives within their own workforce. We need politicians, we need leaders to be talking about these issues, but also taking action on these issues. We need more research, we need more insights onto what the situations are on the ground and how to best serve women and girls who are facing very unique challenges in their own context. But I think it does require kind of a whole of society approach where we're all doing our part, including in our own homes, right? Making sure that we're raising children, both our boys and our girls, to be advocates and to be supportive of some of these, aspirational goals that we just talked about, including the goal to eradicate discrimination against women and girls and promote gender equality around the world.
Jeanette, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Coming up.
This is the time. We have to do something about climate change. There is no other time.
UN Insider.
We are CGTN, China Global Television Network.
No more. No one again. He can hold him. Guns. Word. Protesters.
Were you worried about your life at that particular time? Not at all.
Excellency, thank you very much for your time. What is your assessment of the state of the continent today?
Africa has the potential to power itself.
Excuse me.
Urban areas are home to 55% of the world's population, and that's expected to increase to 68% by 2050. In the next 7 years, there could be 43 megacities around the globe with more than 10 million residents apiece, most of them in developing regions. Tuesday marked World Cities Day. This year's theme, financing a sustainable urban future for all. Encouraging smarter cities is a key target for the UN. In China's Sichuan province, a new smart development is going up. It's the result of an international collaboration. Zhang Su takes us there.
In 2017, Sichuan province established a formal relationship with the U.S. state of California to collaborate on clean energy projects. One of them is the Meishan Smart City development located in Chengdu's Tianfu area. Under construction since 2019, it covers an area of 200 hectares. More than 70 enterprises have already established offices in the city.
As the world's fifth largest economy, California is a pioneer in research and development in clean energy, accounting for 60% of U.S. investment. And our Sichuan province also has an abundance of clean energy resources and is the largest hydropower production base in China. So there's a good prospect for a cooperation between the two regions.
Under the Belt and Road Initiative, Meishan has become a frontier city in China's opening up to the world. The project is also designed to promote green information technology and sustainable development. Only 10% of the city has been completed, but it already provides enterprises with facilities like rooftop solar panels and energy storage piles. More companies are moving to the city.
Our company mainly focuses on digital agriculture, smart cities, and irrigation using our self-manufactured satellites, as well as the Beidou navigation satellite system. We launched 10 satellites last year, ranking fourth in China.
I think a lot of people from my generation feels motivated to work towards reducing climate change because we were brought up with the belief that this is the time we have to do something about climate change. There is no other time. We wouldn't be able to have done this without the support of Meishan, California. Meishan, California helped us, was the first incubator that approached us and really liked our idea and really helped us from the very beginning with an office and resources and valuable support.
Once completed, the Meishan, California Smart City will include research centers, schools, and is expected to house over 200 companies from across the world to share their experience working in the clean energy industry. Sichuan is one of the most pivotal provinces in China for clean energy development, and authorities in Meishan and California are working further to create a more environmentally friendly prospects for their people. Zheng Song, CGTN, Sichuan Province.
I'm Elaine Reyes at UN headquarters in New York. Thanks for being a UN insider.